Okay, so I just barely got my twist placed, and it twists where I want it to. And if I get a behavior I didn't really want if I use the start angle. So I want to make sure I lock that attribute. And if you decide you wanted it later, you could unlock it. So I'm selecting all the attributes I don't want to be messed with, and I lock them. Okay, now we need to make sure that all of these will work together, all three of the deformers. So, and this is the meat of the tutorial. I'm going to show these other two deformers, and let's say the animator wants to bend the toothbrush forward, and they need it to twist as well. But they want it to twist straight up the toothbrush, not to the side like that. But maybe that's the desired behavior. That's the decision you'd have to make as a rigger while communicating to the animator. You know, how should this look when it twists and bends? And then the squash, if I squash it now, that's definitely not what I want. Okay, so I'm pretty sure. So if I leave the squash on, turn that up, I need to adjust the inputs for this for the mesh, so that it will deform in the correct order. The deformation order is what this is called. So I'm going to right click on my mesh and go to inputs, and you'll see them listed right here. I'm going to go to all inputs, and it'll open up a new window, and I can adjust the order that these deformations happen in. And I want to adjust them so that I get the toothbrush to do exactly what I want it to do, regardless of what the animator chooses to do. Okay? So I know that the squash, in order for the squash to work, it needs to happen before the toothbrush twists or bends. Because if it twists or bends, then the bristles are no longer at the location of the squash. So all you have to do is middle mouse click on the squash, and you drag it down. You don't need to drag it below the tweak though. Okay, so now my bristles are squashed, even though it's bent. Okay, see that? So that's good. So I'll set that to negative. It was a -2. I liked that. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. And now, if I select the mesh, we can decide: do I want it? How I want the twist to be? Next, do I want the twist to happen first or the bend to happen first? If I want the twist to happen first, I need to drag it below the bend. And there's what it looks like if it twists first and then bends. Okay. I think I actually liked it the other way, so I'm going to hit undo. And we'll call that finished on that part. Okay. Now I can hide all of these deformers. It's no longer necessary to see them. And what I want to do now is I'm going to go through and set all these deformers back to their 0 position. So bend, set the curvature to 0. On the twist, or that's the squash, sorry. On the squash, I'll set that to 0. And on the twist, I'm going to set this to 0. Okay. Now I need to add some custom attributes to this main control. So I'm going to go to Edit in the channel box and Add Attribute. And I'm going to add one that's Squetch Bristles. So using camel case, this will turn out nicer. That's how you spell squetch, just in case you were wondering. And I'll set a minimum of negative 10, maximum of 10, and a default to 0. I like to use those combination of numbers a lot in custom controls. I'll click Add, and then you can see I have a squelch attribute over here in the channel box now. And I also need a twist, and again, I'm going to do a minimum of negative 10, maximum of 10, default to 0. Click Add, and now I need to do a bend. And again, negative 10, positive 10, 0. Click OK. So now I've got my custom attributes in the channel box, and I'm going to use these to drive the deformer so the animator doesn't have to select a deformer and then try to edit the correct attribute. He just has these attributes over here on the side. So to do that, I'll select all three of my deformers, and then I'll go to the input-output editor of my hypergraph, and I need to select the squash one, the bend one, and the twist one. And then I'm going to hold down spacebar, go to animate, set driven key, set, and that's going to load them up in here, and I will see those attributes that I left unlocked. The locked attributes will not show up in here. Okay, now I need to select my main control because it's going to be the driver, and then click Load Driver. Okay, so there's a couple ways we could do this. We don't actually have to use set-driven keys, but I'll do one set-driven key and one with a direct connection. So we'll do the squelch first. So if I select this squelch attribute on the driver, and I go to my squash and select factor, then I can hit key. And essentially, the squelch attribute is now going to control the factor of the squash attribute. But I need to tell it what range to control it in. So I'm going to change this squelch to a positive 10 now, because that's my maximum. Then I'm going to go to my squash, and I'm going to change its factor. And I'm going to say this is the positive direction to a negative 0.5, and then I'll press key. And you'll see down here, if you've done it right, it says result 1. It means it's at 1 key. Okay, so again, I'm going to go to my main control. I'm going to change this to a negative 10. Go to my squash, and I'm going to shrink this down as much as I ever think it should. That's probably about as much as I feel like it should. And then I'll hit key. And so now the animator, instead of trying to find that squash deformer, he can use my squelch attribute to adjust the bristles of the toothbrush. Okay? So that's pretty handy. Now we need to do the same thing for the twist and the bend. So I'll grab the twist, and I'm going to hook this twist attribute up to the end angle attribute on the twist node. So I select that, hit key, and then I need to adjust my twist to positive 10 there, and I select my twist attribute, and I need to set this as much as I think it should ever bend, and I usually as much as I ever think it should bend plus some, because you never know what the animators are going to do. So I'll rotate it, I'll put it to 95, and then I'll click key. And I go back to the main attribute, set twist to negative 10, and I keep a mental note of the 95. I'm going to put in the negative 95, so it'll do just the opposite when it goes the other direction. Click key. Okay, and now I've got a twist on my toothbrush that the animators can easily access through the main control. Okay, now we need to hook up the bend. So I'll select the bend attribute on the driver on the main control, and then click on bend in the driven area and select the curvature and click key. And then go back to my main control, change the bend attribute, my bend attribute to positive 10. And I'm going to use that to